Welcome back to Always Ageless, the show where we explore the secrets to living vibrantly, tackling the unique challenges of joys at life's later stages with fresh perspectives and practical insights. Plus, we share stories of incredible individuals doing amazing things in the later stages of their life. Today, we are so excited to have Nicole Raymer, a certified professional organizer, certified senior move manager, and chronic disorganization specialist. Well, I think I'm a chronic disorganization specialist, but in a different way. Nicole is the founder of Organized Haven, where she transforms lives by helping people reclaim their spaces, simplify life's transitions, and rediscover the joy in organized living. And yes, there is joy in organized living. At least I hear there is. With her extensive expertise in life's transitions, chronic disorganization, and guiding seniors and their families, Nicole knows that organizing goes far beyond just getting rid of stuff. It's about creating peace, purpose, and a sense of home. And we all love the peace that comes with being at home. So get ready, hold on, get ready to learn from one of the best in the field as we dive into her world and discover how she brings calm in from chaos. Welcome, Nicole Raymer, to Always Ageless.
Thank you, Valerie, so much for having me. It's such an honor, and I don't think I could have explained what I do and my background better than you just did. So thanks for your words. They mean a lot.
You're very welcome. Nicole, you are a NAPO specialist. Let's start out by asking you to please explain what it takes to earn that designation and what does it mean for you and for your clients.
Yes, so I joined the National Association of Productivity and Organizing Professionals. I believe it was in 2016. That was one of the first associations that I joined when learning about professional organizing at the time. And so I've been organizing professionally for 11 years, and I wanted to be a specialist in helping seniors who are looking to declutter, to age in place, but also to downsize and move. It was after my first 3 years of organizing professionally for seniors that I learned about other associations such as the National Association of Senior and Specialty Move Managers, also that I joined in 2016. Both of those associations have done so much to help me learn how to help others. It's one thing to be organized yourself, but when you're going through major life transitions, such as downsizing a lifetime, you've got to know how to help people through those overwhelming transitions. This is Kinsley, and I told you she might join us today.
Hi.
She, she can't hear us, but my son, he's 12, and Kinsley here is 5. Um, but I was always an organized person until I had kids. That was the first transition that just threw everything for a loop in my life. And living in a small home, 880 square feet,
Oh my.
yes, and collecting all of those things that you do when you have any child, let alone your first child. I became disorganized. I had too much stuff. I had not enough space to put it. And I'm not going to keep her for this whole show.
That's right. Welcome to stay.
Hey, hey, I'm in a meeting. I'm going to hand you over to Daddy, okay? 1 second, Valerie.
No problem.
Anyhow, we're back. Quite a distraction. Um, and that's the story of my life. Um, but let me get back to NAPO. My specialist designations at NAPO range from residential organizing to household management, life transitions, and some others. I feel what it means to join an association such as NAPO is the quality of the education that you're putting into your business and your choice to serve seniors or anyone with the transitions that they're facing in life. It wasn't until several years after that that I earned my certified professional organizer designation, and that's with the Board of Certification for Professional Organizers. And what that means is that I've learned how to educate those who I serve in that process of decision making when sorting a lifetime. I've earned 15 hours of paid time, at least 1,500 hours of paid time helping others make those choices. That's what it means to be a certified professional organizer.
It seems, Nicole, that organizing is a deeply personal um, journey, I should say, probably a journey, an event, but a journey actually. So, what is the most surprising discovery that you've made about people in this process?
How much the actual organizing of things has nothing to do with the barrier to getting organized. Um, we collect so much in our lifetime. A lot of the people who I help, they've taken so many things into their household, but not much has ever really left. So
Well, that seems to be the case. Yeah. Yeah.
it's just such an overwhelming process to get through decades of accumulations, and everything that we collect has a story and a memory that's attached to it. And so, again, it's not just the act of decluttering a drawer, it's all of the emotions that are tied to these things. And we feel that if we let it go, that we're losing that memory. Maybe it's very sentimental and it was gifted to us from somebody. And so we feel that we are maybe disappointing that person. Maybe they'll disown us because we didn't keep it
Oh, that's
for the
it.
rest of time. So there's barriers such as that sentimentality, or maybe even sunk cost because we paid so much for it,
Sure.
right? So it's hard to let it go. It's especially hard to make that decision to just donate it. But it takes so much time to find a buyer for the things that we are letting go. And it's just another barrier to, I mean, we're keeping it, but it doesn't mean anything to us anymore. It's not fitting for the life that we're currently living. And it's hard to get to that realization that it's really just not that important. It's at the end of the day, just stuff. Our goal, number one, should be to be happy in our space
Definitely.
so that we have that peace of mind and we have sanity. When we walk into our home, we're not overwhelmed by the stuff that's in it.
So you say, Nicole, that letting go is a daily habit. So what are
hmm
some of the practical ways that people can incorporate this into their daily lives?
I'll give you a couple of examples
Sure.
that you probably even can relate to.
Oh, I'm sure I can.
So, are you an Amazon shopper?
A bit of one, a bit of,
Okay.
but
Yeah,
mostly business things or gifts for my granddaughters.
sure, me too. And I like books, so I'm always buying books on Amazon. And we're bringing things into our home often. So those things usually come in the form of a box. And one of my tips for making letting go a daily habit is to reuse those boxes
Okay.
because there's always something we can fill in that box and let it go. Things that we're not using anymore, clothes that don't fit us anymore, broken toys if we have young kids or grandkids, absolutely anything and everything that we either don't use daily, weekly, monthly, or even yearly. If we're not using those things that often, then we might as well fill that Amazon box with it and see it out the door. I think that's easy.
Yeah, that's a good idea. That's a great idea. I hadn't thought about that. And it's better than just getting rid of the Amazon box.
Exactly, because we're gonna cut it down, right, to fit it into our recycle bin maybe. And I do that when I have nothing to fill it with. However, I have a whole warehouse of boxes because I own a moving company.
Sure.
So I have plenty of boxes to choose from when I'm willing to let things go.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, that's one of my favorite. Go ahead and fill that box and make it continuously useful and bring it to your local favorite charity. They'll find use for the stuff in the box and probably the box itself too.
And I find also that the local assistance league loves to have boxes and hangers and bags and shopping bags. So how does clutter, in your view, really impact not only physical spaces, but someone's mind and their well-being?
Supposedly Albert Einstein, he had a cluttered space and he was still brilliant and not at all distracted by that. So I think maybe some people, maybe they have inspiration from those piles and they even know exactly where that one paper is in that stack, right? So to each their own. And, to some, maybe it's not something that is detrimental to their mental health. For me, on the other hand, I can't work at my desk. Before this podcast recording, Valerie, I had to clear my client files and my bills and all of those things that would otherwise distract me at my desk. I'm just not able to be productive around clutter. But I think more than that, it just could give you the sense of complete overwhelm. We all have projects that are everywhere in our home. Maybe it's hidden behind a closet door or your 5-year-old's bedroom door. That's one that I like to just close the door to because
Absolutely.
it, at least so far, she's not following in my footsteps. So it's mentally draining for me to
Mhm.
see all of these projects in random places around the house
Yeah.
and to have the toys more than just in the toy zone and to feel like I've just got this insurmountable project ahead of me and I don't know where to start. It's a lot easier to figure out where to start if all of that stuff that you have to make decisions on is at least in a zone that is away from your, everyday life.
This is kind of off the subject a little bit because we hope we're not doing this too much. But so are there studies about what causes someone to be a hoarder, for someone to keep stuff that they don't need or use or wear or whatever? What is the psych behind that?
Hmm. Yeah, that's another great question. There have been studies, and hoarding didn't used to be a disorder, a prescribable, um, I don't know if that's the right word, but something that you might be diagnosed with if you were to go to see a therapist and share that that is a problem in your life. Um, I see it a lot in the clients that I serve that it's a learned behavior. Maybe it was something that has been passed down. They saw their parents live that way through the Great Depression because it was important for them to keep everything because they might actually need it one
Sure.
day.
Yep.
But even those people don't traditionally collect actual garbage. I think when there's actual garbage that remains in the home that doesn't end up in the garbage can or out the door, there is more of a sense of loss that this person is experiencing. Maybe they lost a child at a young age
Mm.
or another loved one. And so their barrier is that loss that they haven't been able to easily get past. Um, and things might not leave the house because they might not leave the house,
Oh, yeah. That,
so that social isolation
mm,
is stopping them from taking any action.
yeah,
Um,
it's difficult. That's
mhm.
difficult.
Yeah,
And
there could
I,
also be physical barriers.
yeah,
Maybe they've had some medical challenges or some physical challenges that are impacting their mobility. And so things just kind of stay right around them where they're sitting in their living room. They may live in a two-story home and they're not able to get up to the second story. And so all of the mail piles around them and yeah, so there's certainly studies and there's a lot more evidence to look at. And there's associations such as the Institute for Challenging Disorganization that is educating the public.
really.
So there's some great classes anyone can take and have access to their vault of information. There's also the clutter hoarding scale that is worth a read or worth a look at to
Mhm.
understand the clutter levels from 1 to 5.
That's interesting.
Um,
Yeah, we'll have to look into that. We can maybe have another discussion about that. So the title Certified Senior Move Manager sounds pretty specialized. So what role does this play in the transition for seniors and other people? And how does it go beyond simply managing logistics? Just managing
Yes,
the move. What else is involved in that?
so much. So I joined NASM, the National Association of Senior and Specialty Move Managers, the same year I joined NAPO. Honestly, I had no idea that there was such a thing as a senior move manager. I thought I
I
created
didn't,
it.
yeah, I didn't know until about the same time this year I met you. Was
Okay. Yeah. It's actually an industry that's been around for over 25 years.
really
Um, and yeah, and I thought I created it when I was at a Better Living for Seniors meeting, and someone who was a NASA member and a senior move manager came up to me and said, "Are you a NASA member?" And I said, "Now what?" I had no idea that there was an industry that trained professionals like me on the processes and the important things to think about and consider when downsizing and moving for seniors, and how important it is to go beyond the traditional moving company when you're helping guide someone through a transition such as that when they've lived in their home for 30, 40, 50, or more years. So, where the traditional mover likely has kind and strong movers who will, you know, treat their clients like they would their own grandparents.
sure.
But, nice and strong is not enough, I say often. So a senior move manager is going to do things like my phrase, um, pack with the unpack in mind. I know you've heard me talk about that.
Why don't you tell everyone what that is? What does that mean?
In my opinion, because I coined the phrase, pack with the unpack in mind means to consider the space that you're moving into before you start the process of packing. Of course, it's important to also sort and declutter and downsize the contents that are being packed. Most people, when they move, they just pack it all up. They've they've consistently in their lifetime maybe even upsized in space, so it wasn't something that they were really worried about. They just put it all in a box, got it to its destination, and then unpacked it, even if it took 7 years. Uh,
Or
se-
did pack it?
Yes, exactly. I use 7 years as an example because I've actually had someone hire me before who it took 7 years to, they just left most of the boxes in the garage. And, he would rebuy things because he didn't know where it
Yeah.
was. Um, it is overwhelming to unpack, especially if there's not enough space to unpack it. And so I believe that you should pack with the unpack in mind so that when you move, you already know that you're not going to have an abundance of excess boxes that you have no space to put the contents into. Um, so if you don't pack with the unpack in mind, you're moving everything. And if you do get to unpack it all, you're still whether you do or you don't, you're faced with a further downsize. Now the overwhelm hasn't stopped. And, where you should be feeling free and complete and happy right away in your new space, you're still overwhelmed and you just don't know what to do. And you just paid all that money, or
Yeah.
all that you spent all that time packing up and moving all of those things only to have no space for it in the end. It's just not it's just not the way to do it, especially when you're downsizing significantly in square footage.
That's interesting. And obviously a challenge that a lot of people have.
Hmm.
Tell us, how does chronic disorganization vary from just utter messiness?
Hmm.
What does your approach to that really mean? What does that do for people?
So chronic disorganization means that this isn't a new problem necessarily. This is something that you may have experienced for a long time. It's nothing that you are not used to. It's just been a challenge, a lifelong challenge for you. And so hoarding is different than than chronic disorganization, in that it might not be something that you faced lifelong, but again, you are hoarding your space with things that you don't have room for and things that are not important. So the garbage, for example, um, those things that don't end up in the trash that aren't serving you in any way. Um, and so I've had clients who are hoarding that, again, it was a lifelong problem. And I've had others who that loss that they experienced from their 39-year-old child who passed away unexpectedly has just changed their life so much that they just don't want to experience any more loss. And so they keep it all, whether it's garbage or not. I hope that explains it well.
It does. It does. That's very interesting. And so, how do you help them get through that?
It takes time and patience from both parties. Um, Sometimes it's wise to work side by side with that person who is hoarding, or who has faced disorganization all of their life, so that you can teach them methods, um, of making sure that once they are organized and clutter free or have downsized and moved, that they do not reaccumulate. That's another reason why, um, the designation certified professional organizer exists, um, because we're learning how to help guide that person to make better decisions for lifelong success. So it's different than working with someone who, um, may have a cleaning company who likes to organize as well.
Right.
Because, if you're working with someone like that, you are, coming back every couple of weeks and fixing what has, rebroken. And that's something I actually experienced a lot when I started organizing professionally, was that need to return and re-clear the dining room table and refold the laundry and put away, and you know even do the dishes because your client, um, even finds doing that difficult.
Uh-huh.
And so while I'm happy to come back and I'm happy to reset, and reorganize, I never felt like I was really doing my client a good service, if I wasn't educating them on how to reset on their own and how to be motivated to get through that process of decluttering and organizing and putting away and finding new homes for things as new things come in.
You work with people, Nicole, through some of life's biggest transitions, and not always just older people are downsizing. I'm sure it sounds like other transitions. So, what's give us an example of one story that has really touched you and convinced you that you are doing the right thing with your life, that this is exactly where you belong.
Um, it's actually a story that I share often. I'll tell you first one of my other phrases that you might not have ever heard me say before, and that everyone deserves a home that is clutter-free and fitting for the life they are currently living. Um, so I recently helped someone in her 80s who was getting evicted from her apartment, and it was her and her husband who were actually both turning 85 this year, 5 days apart. So they nearly shared a birthday. And, um, the church got me involved with this project because they were hoarding and they were getting evicted from this apartment that was on a second story. And so they had 12 or 15 steps to walk up to get to their second story apartment. That was not a senior living community.
Mhm.
It wasn't even a 55 plus community. And so, their neighbors, they weren't friendly with, they didn't relate with. And, You know, I won't say that they were socially isolated because they did belong to the church. They did go out to eat, and you know, they did go shopping, maybe too much. And so they collected so much in this apartment that they lived in for 10 years that has not been fitting for the life that they were living and for their need as they aged. Um, and it was very hard for them to get up those stairs and to get down those stairs. And sometimes it landed them in the hospital and in long-term rehab. And her husband didn't make it through that, I'm afraid. But we only had 20 days to find them a new home that was affordable, whether they were going to be able to move together or he was going to be in long-term care and she was going to be able to move to assisted living. So me and some placement professionals here in my community helped to secure additional time so that we had some extra time to clear the apartment without them, you know, receiving exorbitant charges from the apartment complex,
Sure.
and to find them a new home within that time frame as well. Again, that was affordable. And this was one story that it it was really going to be hard for me to work side by side with this couple to make smart downsizing choices because of the level of the hoard and because of the lack of time and funds that we had available to go through that process. And so sometimes, again, I'm able to work side by side with an individual or with a couple, and other times there's really not enough funds to be able to support the time that it takes to guide them through all of those steps of making good choices and letting go of the excess, whether it's garbage or not.
And that
Um,
must be extremely challenging and frustrating.
you know, it really takes someone that has a heart for serving this need and this demographic, someone who is kind and non-judgmental. In fact, I don't call someone like that a hoarder. I feel that it's improper to put the label on the person themselves.
Yeah.
And so instead, I label the house. I think it makes someone feel more understood if you're talking about the condition of the space rather than the condition of the person and, you know, just putting a label on them. So instead of calling someone a hoarder, I would recommend using terms such as this person is experiencing hoarding tendencies, or this home is chronically disorganized, or this home is hoarded, so that that person feels understood and not judged instead.
Yeah, that's brilliant. That's brilliant. And how compassionate that is also. Because look, people know their house is a mess. I mean, there are not always, and I certainly have sold some where I walked in and people had no idea what their house looked like or the challenge that we had going through and getting it ready to sell at top dollar, although we've been able to accomplish that in many cases, but they don't need to be told. You know, in most cases, people know. And so that's very kind and compassionate of you to come up with those terms. And I hope that our viewers and our listeners all really got that. We'll definitely need to put that in our be sure that we repeat that when we promote this episode because I think that's really touching.
Yeah, it's
Very-
something we're all learning, members of the ICD. We all learn together from our experiences, and so I'm afraid I didn't coin those ones, but
but you use them well.
yeah, we owe it to our collective, and yeah, it's very important that we change the language around that. And it's funny that you say most people know their mess. Um, I have a lot of people who call and actually call themselves a hoarder. And I get there to their home and no, not at all. You know, I always have the ability to say, I promise you, I've seen much worse. It's actually those who are truly hoarding, they don't see it. Um, and I quote on square footage and density. All of my projects are quoted on square footage, density, and touch level. The higher the touch level, the higher the density, the bigger the space, the more it's going to cost. And and so I have to have a really honest conversation with those who call me for support to get down to the bottom of what density means to them and how they would grade their space, whether it's low, medium, high, or very high. Very high would be chronically disorganized or hoarded, where low would be, I've already downsized before. I've been decluttering all of my life, and it's really light, the amount of things that I'm asking you to either, pack and move, or, go through the rest of the process of downsizing and letting go.
And we know, Nicole, that sometimes the challenges of downsizing and decluttering and so forth aren't just the problem of the aging parents. Sometimes it's
Mhm.
an issue for the adult children, either that
Mhm.
they want to support their parents or they think their parents should get rid of things, or the kids are the ones that I've been in houses just recently, actually, that was just, you wouldn't say it was a disaster. It was really pretty bad. And they said, oh, our kids don't want us to get rid of anything. Now, really, the kids happen to live in another house where they don't have enough space. They don't want to get rid of it, so they just leave it in their parents' house. But how do you handle all these different situations that involve the adult children of aging parents?
Mhm. Yeah, um, it isn't just age, definitely. That's the challenge. We all face it. Um, we collect all of our lives, and the adult children usually don't want their parents' stuff, some of which has been saved for decades in the attic. It is no longer any good. And so they've saved it so long because they thought that their kids would want it someday,
For sure.
and they just don't. Um, and sure, adult children, and even grandchildren and great grandchildren, they have filled their homes with all of the things that they use every day, week,
Sure.
month, and year, as I say. And their style is different. A lot of our adult kids actually use our services themselves, because they too have to move one day,
Sure.
and they too want to be organized and to not ever be in the position their parents were in, facing a crisis and all of a sudden having to deal with this in a matter of weeks or even days. We
Yeah.
get a lot of calls. I think we get more calls with time, with months of advance notice, because they realize the sheer size of their project and all that has to happen to get to that point of being ready to move. But some, they haven't prepared. And yes, they've received that eviction notice because it was found out the condition of their space. And there's only a matter of moments to get through it. And so we work with adult kids all the time because they're dispersed oftentimes. They're not in the same state, let alone the same
They-
city.
yeah.
And even if they are not only leading full lives with full spaces, but they work, and they sometimes are even raising young children still at home. And so there's just not enough time, there's not enough patience. It's something I have an easier time with guiding my client because I am not emotionally attached to this person or their things. And so it's easy for me to serve, kind of as a mediator. I have no therapy background, no mediation background, but I find myself in that place because the adult kids are so overwhelmed by this themselves and the change that they're seeing in their parents. Um, and they just don't know the first step. And then, mom and dad, they are a little irritated with the lack of understanding from their kids as to why they kept all of these things and why they haven't wanted to move. And they're facing this now because they've been fighting it for months or years.
Yeah, or the challenge I have is I have my mom, who you know is 105, who honestly believes that the things she has, that someone will want them. Right? She hasn't faced yet the fact that nobody wants those things anymore. And you and I know that, but that kind of goes along with the question that how do you, or we probably you find that um or do you find that the different generations face this challenge differently? And what are some of the different ways that you handle them? The older people, my age or older, much older, or the people that are more your age, do they look at this differently?
Oh, yes, they do. Absolutely. So my seniors, they're ready to let go overall. Overall, they understand where their life is leading them and the importance of leaving some of the things they've collected in their past because they're not useful anymore. And why have it? If it's going to be in a box in the garage or at a storage unit, why have it? Why not let it go to someone who could use it? Which we actually are able to find plenty of people who want their stuff. It might just not
Are
be their
you?
kids.
Are you?
Yes. So it doesn't all go to the landfill. Some things will, that just don't need to see another light of day. They're old, they're worn, they're broken. Some things have to go in the ground, but we limit that and we are able to find new homes for all of the things that they used to love and they used to use but are no longer serving them. So that's really not a problem, especially how we do things with Maxsold, our auction platform partner. Uh, but the younger kids, and I get people all the time that say, well, it looks like by your website and the things that I have heard and the research that I've done that you only serve seniors. Is that true? Because I really need your help. And so while I prefer working with the older demographic because they are ready to let go for the most part again, the younger really isn't. They want to be organized. They want to have that Better Home and Gardens magazine cover.
Okay.
They have big plans for the beautification of their space.
Uh-huh.
Um, Maybe not so much the functionality, which I think is hugely important, but they want to keep all of the things. They don't want to let go, and they really don't see the value in that yet. And maybe they're not downsizing. And so I really just have a passion for helping people let go and get past those barriers to letting go. And I can't provide as valuable of a service to the younger demographic, I'm afraid, even those my age at 41, because they're going to keep all of those kids' clothes. They're going to keep all of their books that they've already read and don't intend to read again. All of those DVDs that they're not going to put in a DVD player anymore because they are streaming on Hulu and Netflix and all of that.
Right.
And so it's harder to really provide a valuable service when that person is keeping everything that is no longer useful.
Or for kids your age, even because we have a son your age, even so video games, right? When they first started to come out, what were they, the iBox or whatever they were, the kids were playing in. And I know I have my son's soccer socks. I only have one son, so I feel that gives me the right to save his soccer socks.
Sure.
As I don't keep everything, but some things I do. And when I was before I even had grandchildren, before I think maybe even before my son was married, I know it was, I bought some beautiful, beautiful dolls with porcelain faces, and I said I'll save these until I have granddaughters. Well, my granddaughters are now almost teenagers, and they've never shown an interest in those dolls. So I need to get your advice on how to get rid of them because they're not throwaway dolls. They're pretty valuable.
Right.
Need something to happen. And I'm sure we all have our own level of collecting or hoarding that's not really a hoarder, but we still all have
Exactly.
those few things that we've kept and don't want to get rid of.
Oh, yes, I even have them. So we all face this, whether we are, you know, um, the general public or we are certified in professional organizing. We all have those things that are hard to let go and these projects that one day we're going to get to, like the um, scrapbooking of all of the photos that we have printed. I have a story with that
Yes.
that I think is impactful that
Yes.
I would love to share.
Please. Yes.
So I told you earlier, if it makes the cut with this video, you saw my 5-year-old, and I told you
Yes.
about my 12-year-old. Um, so little Danny, I had saved all of his all of the drawings and the pictures from school and from
Of course.
preschool,
Yeah.
but I hadn't gotten to that project yet of scrapbooking them and I kept up on making sure that I recycled the things that really didn't tell the story of my child at that age. I'm good about that, only keeping the most impactful drawings that will, show that timeline of growing up. I was moving, my husband and I, this was in 2019. I think I was 6 months pregnant, 6 or 7 months pregnant at the time with Kinsley. And my husband did most of this move. I mean, we're in the business and we had time. And so he was carting things over here to our new home, and he had been carting some things to the landfill. Well, he didn't know that all of those things that I saved of little Danny's were on the top shelf of his closet, just in file folders and standing upright, not in a bin, not in anything that was labeled that said, very important, keep this, scrapbooking
Do not
stuff,
dispose. Yeah.
do not dispose. Yep. And he's an Aries, my husband. Hopefully you'll meet him one day. And I swear Aries are fast paced and they make accidents during, you know, those fast paced movements. And
Oh,
so he just got through it while I'm working. And yeah, come to find out that evening I found out that he had brought it all to the landfill.
oh no.
And so how important I can tell that story of how important it is to be thoughtful about how what you're saving, but also how you're saving it. And you have to protect those projects and get to them one day, but make sure your whole home knows how important those things are, and how important it is to get to it before it's too late and it's gone. So now, my project instead is to go back over the years on my Facebook posts and print those pictures that I shared
Oh,
publicly
that's
so I
right.
could still put a scrapbook together, but just with the pictures of some of those things that I was able to share.
Sure. So what brought you to create Organized Haven? What was that to you? What was your vision? How did you bring it to life? What was that to you?
hmm So, I think I also told you that while I've been organized all of my life, when I faced that transition of becoming a new mom and working long weeks away from home, I got disorganized in an 880 square foot space with no storage and space for all of these toys and clothes I was collecting of my sons. So, I was in that space of needing a professional organizer and didn't know that this industry existed to help support people going through that and similar transitions. Until one day I was watching The Bachelor.
Oh my goodness.
So, any of you that know The Bachelor and watch it religiously, like me, knows that there are 25 contestants,
Yes.
whether so for The Bachelor, it's female contestants. And so one of those female contestants back then, so this must have been in 2013, was a personal organizer. I
Oh,
believe right in Orlando in my Central Florida market. I've got to go back and watch those episodes and see who it was and reach out to her, in fact, and tell her and thank her for being my inspiration in doing this, because I just didn't know, kind of like I didn't know a senior move manager existed. I
right,
didn't know that professional organizing also was an industry and that I could help
right.
others. Once I got myself through that transition and had pictures to prove it, I took before and after photos. I learned how to create my own website because I literally started Organized Haven on a dime. I had nothing. Um,
As many of us do with our business.
yeah, exactly. We start at the bottom, and that's what I did. And so when I where I thought that I was going to be helping others through the transition I faced, I ended up finding out that my passion was just, helping somebody else with a different transition. Uh, so 2013 is when I started Organized Haven, although it was known as something else.
Mhm.
Um, and I also actually thought, because I have a financial background, that I would be helping people with their personal finances and budgeting and credit building. And that's just not where it led me.
Yeah.
It's so surprising even that I got into the move management field
Uh-huh.
and then later decided to just take on the move itself as well to provide a one-stop shop, a VIP white glove experience, and to do the actual move, as a fully licensed and insured moving company as well.
Now we've seen that you offer different packages. So what are the different packages that Organized Haven offers to people?
Yep. So actually, most of our client projects don't involve our organizing packages at all because we're able to um, quote for the exact service that they're looking for, again, based on their square footage, density, and touch level. But the packages are very helpful for those that have an actual budget and for those that need to um, build the services that we offer them around that budget. So we have a package of hours ranging, I believe, from 5 to 15 to 30 that would help support someone at the bottom who might only have a small project. Their goal, whether it's based on their budget or their actual need, is to just focus on a small space. Maybe it's their office. Maybe they work
Sure.
from home, um, you know,
That's
and
a good idea.
yeah. And all the way to that person who has a larger sized project or a budget to be able to afford additional services that maybe lean towards more of that full home decluttering and organizing.
Uh-huh.
So most of my clients are downsizing and moving, and we don't use those packages for that. But I love the package model because I like to be transparent. It's one of my top core values here at Organized Haven. And so if someone has that need, sorry about my thumb there. It's just one of those
That's okay.
auto reactions.
Yeah.
Um,
But then I would assume that that also makes it easier for people to start with you, as a lot of people may not know where to start. They don't really know what to tell you. They don't really know because we don't know what our level is compared to somebody else. So this way, when you have a package and you talk about that, it would seem like for someone like me would be able to say, okay, well, I can relate to that. Or no, I'm really not that bad, but maybe I could use this package instead. So
Yeah, or maybe they just have baby steps. How do you eat an
sure,
elephant, right? One bite at a time. And
absolutely.
so maybe their budget is going to allow that small package right now that they could afford again in a few months when they can focus on their next goal. So, yeah, I really like them and I've had some positive feedback because a lot of professional organizers, they're not publishing their rates or
Yeah,
even packages on their website because and I understand they find value in having a conversation that's with that person to understand their needs and to then build something around it. But a lot of people are looking for help and they're not calling us. They might hold on to our information for 6 months, a year. I've had people call me many years after they found my card somewhere or found me online, and they finally built up the nerve to even
courage, sure.
call. And yeah, I find that it's helpful to them to at least have an idea of affordability before they even call. And I have a lot of people who just buy it. They buy the package and that's the first time I ever hear from them
All right.
is that purchase online. So that's how I knew it was working and I wanted to keep that up so that people knew exactly what it would be like to work with us and exactly what it would cost and if it was affordable for them.
Sure. And I know for me, sometimes when I see that there's no price, then I think, well, maybe they don't want their competition to know what they charge.
Sure.
That's how my
Yeah,
industry. And then there's other times when I will think, um, that I would like to know a price, and I'd really like to know that before I make a call. And then there's other times when I would rather have the conversation and get to know the person better before I committed to anything. And certainly if I knew you already, that would be one thing. But if I don't know the person, then sometimes I like to get to know them a little bit before I make a commitment on price. And
of
I'm sure
course.
people that are in both situations.
Hmm.
Tell us what is your goal for Organized Haven? What would you like that to become? Because I
Yeah.
think honestly, and um, I'm not sure if you agree, but I honestly think that this is all evolving a little bit because as much as it's not brand new, as people my age continue to get older and live longer and become more active and more involved in life as we get older, there are a lot of people my age who, when I was in your age, I was supposed to be dead already or very close to it. And we have a financial planner that did an outline for us a couple weeks ago. And my husband said, well, this is interesting. Valerie, I'm supposed to die next year, and you're supposed to die 10 years from now, and then everything's going to go to our son. Well, my mom's 105. My husband's parents all lived to be in their late 90s, so we don't expect that that's going to happen. But it was interesting that we saw that was the the platform or the proposed performa, so to speak.
Projected.
Projected, right? Projected that we wouldn't live very long. So how do you see what's going to happen to you, and how do you see your industry changing?
Hmm. Oh, such great questions. So when and we've just talked about that I started my company as an organizing company, helping everyday people declutter their homes, whether they were a senior or not. And if they were, to age in place, they had no intention on moving. And, over the years, I've transitioned my model at Organized Haven, and it became primarily a senior move management company, helping seniors downsize and move with the support of outside movers. And then again, we transitioned to taking on the move itself. All along, also providing online estate sale services, auction style with Maxold. And so along the way, I feel that I've lost the senior who wants to declutter to age in place. They call me instead sometimes in crisis mode when they have to move. They haven't wanted to move. And so they never called me before because my marketing materials, my website, the people who know of Nicole Raymer and Organized Haven, they see us as a senior and specialty moving company. And it's true. Um, but it's so important that the older adults who are trying to age in place with grace
Yes.
and for as long as possible, that they too have access to the services that we offer when they need them, such as decluttering, letting go of that lifetime of things they're no longer using, so they can at least live clutter free and again in a home that is fitting for the life that they are living. And maybe then they would have less falls and other
Sure.
crises that
Yep.
are otherwise leading them to a new space,
And we
usually in senior living.
Yep, and we certainly know that that's important. Unfortunately, we have run out of time. I didn't watch
Oh,
our time close enough. We have run out of time. Nicole, you're delightful, just as everyone in our group, everyone I ever know says about you, how much fun you are and how great you are to have in a group. Thank you so much for joining us. Tell everyone real quick how they can find you. And we want to remind our listeners to come back again next Monday at 3 o'clock to Always Ageless, where we hear another episode about someone who's going to help us live our life fully to in any age and live a full life in our older years. Nicole, tell us how people can find you.
thank you, Valerie. It was such a pleasure and an honor to be on. So thank you, and to those who are listening. So you can find me and Organized Haven at www.organizedhaven.com. There's some great blogs there if you're a reader and want to learn more as well about how to declutter to age in place or downsize and move. You can find me on Facebook as well as Nicole Raymer. Feel free to send me a friend request. And you can find the Organized Haven page on Facebook and Instagram, and you can find me on LinkedIn as well.
Thank you again, Nicole Raymer, and to our viewers and our listeners, thank you for joining us on Always Ageless with Valerie V.